Welcome to Net Zero. I'm Ali Grutchfield. How is the UK tackling its net zero strategy? Earlier this year, the UK government introduced a sustainability and climate change strategy for UK schools. But what did teachers and students think of all of it? The Right Honourable Lord Jim Knight of Weymouth works in education, digital technology, and as a legislator. He was the Chief Education and External Officer at TES Global Ltd and co-founded the TES Institute, the fifth largest qualifier of teachers in England. As a UK government minister and MP, Jim was a member of Gordon Brown's cabinet before joining the House of Lords after the 2010 general election. We are pleased to welcome the Right Honourable Lord Jim Knight to Net Zero. Earlier this year, the UK government introduced a sustainability and climate change strategy for UK schools. Do you think it goes far enough to meet both what young people and teachers want?
Ultimately, I don't think it does go far enough. I really welcome that the UK government, having hosted COP26 in Glasgow in November and made a commitment there that they were going to do more around sustainability and climate change in schools, that they then consulted on the strategy and they published a strategy. That's really welcome. I don't want anyone to think that I don't warmly welcome the movement that's gone on in the last year from where, frankly, the UK government, and politically I'm not their friend, but they weren't in a good place in terms of wanting to do this in schools, and they've really gone on a journey, and that's great. But ultimately, they are still saying, in terms of what students and teachers want, which is more curriculum time, more space in the timetable to learn about climate change and sustainability, and to give them more of the tools to be able to themselves do something about it. That's what the key stakeholders, students and teachers, want, and they're not being given that in a mandated form. So if a school decides that they don't want to find the time for that, then that's fine. They're encouraged to, but they're not required to. And that's where I don't think the government's quite got it right yet.
What achievements do you think there have been to date? Is that where you're kind of building off of like the cigarette ban and plastic bags, or do you think it stems beyond that at all?
Well, I think we've done pretty well in the development, particularly in some parts of the UK, because we have some devolved government, a bit like you've got in the States, 50 states. We've got 4 nations here in the United Kingdom: England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Scotland and to some extent Wales have done particularly well around wind power. Okay. I spend a lot of time on the Northern Ireland of Scotland that has an excess of energy that it produces in terms of renewables. So I think we've done okay on renewables, and for a while there was some good incentivization for households with something called net metering, where if you had solar panels, if you had wind turbines, if you got that kind of a property, you could put power into the national grid and be paid for that, as well as take power out when you weren't generating. And that net metering and the incentivization for that worked pretty well. I think we're doing pretty well on the take-up of electric vehicles and the provision of electric charging points around and about the place. It'd be nice if they didn't break down quite so often, and that they accepted contactless payments a bit. But so there's a bit more to be done, and there was a discussion that I've just come from in the UK Parliament about that just today, about what more we could do on that. So we've got some of those things working pretty well, for some time we've been closing down coal-fired, oil-fired power stations, and that's pretty good. There's a debate about nuclear, so the energy mix continues to be a debate, but we're better off than many of our European neighbours, who are still, unfortunately, right now in the current politics, too dependent on Russian oil and gas. We are far less so, partly because we've got our own North Sea oil, but in large part because we've begun that process of transitioning to more renewable sources sooner, and that's gone pretty well. But there's a long way to go.
Do you have any final thoughts or takeaways or anything that you feel like is important to call attention to for just the broad net zero audience?
I guess, my preoccupation is education. And it's to go back to this behaviour change argument. You know, I tried to get the law changed in my country here in England to insert a new aim into our curriculum in all of our schools, which is the third aim, which was to instill an ethos and an ability to care for oneself, to care for others, and to care for the natural environment for present and future generations, which is a text kind of lifted out of the sustainability movement. And I really like it because what it's saying, you know, I think our school system needs to change for lots of reasons, including this one. But if we are going to properly prepare young people to be adults and lead fulfilling lives as adults, then having an ability and nurturing an ability to care for oneself and care for others means you're going to have good relationships. And good relationships are right at the heart of being a successful adult and being right at the heart of being a successful member of the workforce as well. And to care for the natural environment for present and future generations is about what we've been talking about. And I just have a sense that approach doesn't have to be those words, and it's nothing to do with me. You know, these are well-established words and they reflect the sustainable development goals and so on, but they need to be heart and center of what we're doing with young people in schools. And it is putting the heart back into schools. And if you put the heart back in, then sustainability and climate change is right there.
Thank you, Jim, for sharing your insights with our Net Zero audience today. I'm Ali Grutchfield, and I add my voice to the voices of Net Zero international youth peers to monitor the actions of our world's leaders to achieve their net zero commitments.